right. Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Kathryn Ely. I work with ASF. I am the family resource advocate and been doing a lot with siblings and have some really exciting stuff kind of coming up. I just wanted to introduce everyone, or y'all will introduce yourselves, and we will get rolling. We have a question and answer box that I'm going to be monitoring this whole time, and part of what we really hope you guys will do and feel comfortable doing is throwing your questions out there, and we will answer them as best that we can kind of throughout. But all that saying, if we don't have time to, or we can't get to them, we'll try and make sure that everyone you get your questions answered. We even have to directly reach out. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and introduce, we're going to ask our adult siblings that are on here. We are so grateful for all of y'all taking your time to kind of come up and talk to all of us. But if you don't mind sharing who you are, who your sibling is, and if you will just tell us, if you can, one of your best memories with your sibling. So I don't know how you guys want to kick it off. I can go in order, or you guys can just jump in. Okay, we'll go in order. All right, so I see Drew on the screen first.
Hello, my name is Drew Wilkerson. I am the older brother, 6 years older brother of Paige. She has UPD. I live in Franklin, Tennessee. The rest of my family lives in Mississippi. I'm a first grade teacher. I'm entering my 11th year teaching. And I have a son who's 5 years old, and that kind of gets into a positive memory. One of those, just thinking overall positives, is just the love and passion that Paige has for her family. And when I was having a son, we were nervous about how she would do with a baby entering the family. And she just went in with arms wide open, and she loves Simon and then Simon's cousin Josie, and she just loves them and somewhat obsessed with them. So that's just a positive memory of something that we were a little apprehensive about, but that has really been a positive.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love hearing how they interact with nieces and nephews. And I know that's been a question kind of popping up as well with grandchildren coming into the mix. So I see Alex next. If you don't mind, introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Alex Jamieson. I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am the oldest of 3 girls. The youngest is Carly, who has Angelman syndrome. She's deletion positive. And I grew up being her PCA. I was lucky enough to get paid to be her PCA. And then I grew up to become an accountant, a certified public accountant. So I'm a PCA and a CPA, which gets confusing when I get the mail. But my favorite thing about Carly is just how affectionate she is. She gives the best hugs. She has to be cuddling or touching you at all times. And I'm actually not really a physical touch person, but with Carly, that is I crave it from her and I love it. So.
That's awesome. Thank you. I should say, I didn't tell you all this. I have an 8-year-old with AS, and so he also is very cuddly. So Michelle, if you want to go next.
Yeah, sure. So hi guys, my name is Michelle Harvey-Martin. I am the oldest of 3, and Matt is the youngest. He is 26 years old and he has Angelman syndrome. I am a special education teacher in the Southern California area. We live about 15 minutes from my parents. I'm also a member of the family resource team specializing in IEPs, behavior, communication, things like that. If anybody has questions, send them my way. It was hard to pick a favorite memory per se. So I'm going with general things that I love about him. I think one thing is his laugh when it's very throaty and like a guttural laugh when he's really happy about something. That's always, it cracks me up. And then also now that he's a head taller than I am, I do love his hugs even more, especially when it's a gentle hug, because I fit right under his neck because I'm a little shorter. So yeah, looking forward to this.
Thank you. And thank you so much for all that you do with the resource team. So this is going to be something that ASF is utilized now for quite a few years. So we're really excited that we are now kind of adding in this whole sibling panel. So sorry, you can hear my 6-month-old in the background. I apologize for that. She's found a new voice. All right, Amber, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, I'm Amber. I am younger sister to Ashley. Ashley is 37 and she's deletion positive. And Ashley and I are both from Central Illinois. When I was thinking about favorite memory or favorite thing about Ashley, what came to my mind was when she was the maid of honor in my wedding. We weren't really sure if she would want to walk down the aisle or how she would handle the whole situation. And she really wasn't feeling it in the rehearsal, but she's always had such a sense for special days and special things happening in the family. And that day she could really feel that. And so she walked down very proud, and it was a special moment for all of our family. So we just enjoyed having her be a part of my wedding. And I also participate on the ASF Adult Task Force. And looking forward to the panel today.
We again can't tell you how much we really appreciate all that you guys do and what you're willing to do for this community and what you're willing to do today, because one thing that we have seen so much of is siblings and adult siblings wanting to talk with parents, and we've seen a lot of parents wanting questions or having questions for younger siblings, and how do they kind of navigate some of those. So we will kick off our last panelist with Lesley, and then we'll roll right in.
My name's Lesley McCallister, and I live in Charleston, West Virginia, and I'm the oldest of 4 girls, and the youngest is my sister Kate, who's deletion positive and has Angelman syndrome, and she is 33, and she lives nearby myself, but our other 2 sisters live out west. So one of the things that we like to do as a family, so one of our fondest memories is when we all went skiing together, and Kate actually conquered being being upright on skis. It was many years ago, but just the thrill that she got from participating with the whole family and like being actively engaged, and she was super proud of herself. So it takes us back a couple years, but that's one of our fondest family memories, I would say. So I also am a sibling representative on the Angelman Syndrome Board of Directors, and I'm happy to help out in a myriad of ways, and look forward to chatting with everybody today.
You're also part of our good old adult task force.
Yes.
We're with Amber as well. So it's neat. I did a session at 12:45 for a newly diagnosed family. So now it feels like we are just totally kind of transitioning, but it's neat to see the involvement, the questions, you learn from other people, and you learn from having, we talk so much about kind of like having your person, and I feel like I have someone that I'm really good friends with whose daughter is the same age as Stetson, and her daughter has AS, and we just are able to really connect, and I feel like that's something that you need all throughout life with having a special needs sibling. So I hope that one of the things that we can get across to some of these other siblings and parents and whoever's on today is that you still need that person. You still need something. So like we said, please feel free to throw anything into the chat box. If we can get to it, we will. If we can't, or chat or the question and answer box. So I'll be monitoring those as well. I'm going to kind of ask some questions. Feel free to deviate, and I will put myself on mute so you guys don't hear my baby any longer. But there are 2 things that we are going to be announcing that are pretty exciting. And so we're going to wait till the end and talk about the 2 things that we are going to be launching sibling wise for older and younger siblings. But one of the things we really want to get into, or 2 of the things, is we want to talk about transitioning your sibling to adulthood, and then also how y'all felt as younger. So let's talk about how you guys felt as younger siblings. Can you guys hear me over that I have to go. Okay, thanks. So as you felt as younger siblings, just kind of what were some of your experience? You guys, I'm just gonna have you jump in and share this, and maybe some of the people in the panel or in the attending can kind of say that they had the similar experiences and whatnot. But did you experience guilt? Was it hard? Just jump in and tell us really kind of how it was for you guys growing up.
I'll start. So, I work with 6-year-olds all the time. And so I just see how flexible kids are and how kids go with the flow. And I think that's how it was for me is, that was just the life that we had. And, there were expectations and responsibilities with it. But at that time as a kid, I never questioned it. I never said, why is our life so different or anything like that. So, for people with young kids, it's the reality, explain it to them. And I mean, kids are flexible, they'll go with it.
I think the feelings change a lot. Like it's almost hard to answer that question because I know like at different ages, I felt different ways and even different days I felt different ways. But something that has resonated a lot with people that I talk to about siblinghood is like parents my parents did this well for the most part, a lot of the time, of letting me feel exactly the way I felt and working through it with me and teaching me how to process it. So some days when I was feeling like angry, or certain days when I was mourning the loss of some new milestone or some sibling thing, like not having my mom or my dad say like take that on as something that hurt them too, or take that on as something I shouldn't feel was really essential. So I know that kind of skips ahead. You're asking like, what was I feeling? But it's really, I don't know. There's so many different emotions on different days,
Yeah, no, and that's what you have to feel what you feel, and you have to go through those feelings. We were even talking about that with the younger parents, is that you have to go through the emotions. It doesn't mean that you necessarily stay there, you live there, but you experience them and you find ways to move on. Some of the questions that we've been asked is, how do you handle, and so this would be to y'all again when you were younger, but how do you handle, or how did you handle feelings of maybe that your sibling with AS got more attention or had to, do you feel like your parents did a good job in not calling them out or anything, but of providing a balance? Or if you could go back, what would be something that, your 10, 12, 15-year-old self would tell the parents of how to maybe improve upon what they did or what they did really well?
I think one of the things my parents did a good job was trying to put a positive spin at the beginning when there were so many unknowns, like trying to get everybody to be on Katie's team and cheer her on. And I remember when she was trying to learn to crawl and then trying to learn to walk, it was like she had this big cheering section and she was probably a little overwhelmed by how many people were cheering her on at one time. But I think they did a good job of trying to put that positive spin on it, even though nobody really, I mean, my sister was diagnosed in 1989. So at the time, there was a lot less information than there is now, and a lot less supports and best practices and such. And so I think they just always tried to instill in us that we're going to do the best we can with the knowledge we have, and really try to support her to let her live her best life, just like they were doing with the other 3 of us. And so that kind of has stuck with me all along, that we might not have all the answers or know what the right answer is, but if you can be their biggest cheerleader and kind of go alongside them and love them where they're at the moment, I think it goes a long way to getting there.
And kind of on the flip side of that, I think my parents, and I will say, I know my dad is watching. I see his name in the panelist thing. So caveat to everything I say today. But my parents did a really good job of, Matt was just always there. He just kind of hearing Lesley say, like, being their biggest cheerleader, Matt was kind of our biggest cheerleader. So we did a lot of sports growing up. I played softball in college, like from age 6 on. Matt was just always at my games. Or, our other brother was more of a swimmer and a water polo player, and Matt would do his time, at both. He was just kind of our constant cheerleader and was always around and always there. We got to do what we wanted to do, whether it was a certain sport or a certain club. I always thought they were really, looking back, they were great about it didn't limit us in terms of what activities we wanted to do. They would figure out how to make it work. One parent went to this sport, the other parent went to that sport, and then Matt kind of alternated, I feel like, who he went with, or depending on who was coaching at that time. So that was one, looking back, I think definitely a positive, thing that my parents did.
Nice. Do y'all feel that, oh, Amber, go ahead. Were you gonna say?
Oh, I think a positive thing that my parents did in terms of balance was growing up, they focused on Ash and I's relationship being as sisters. So I wasn't asked very often to sister sit or babysit. So that growing up, the relationship was as a sibling and not as a caregiver. And I know that, not all family dynamics were able to make that work, but I appreciate looking back that as a kid, our focus was being siblings.
And I think that's really important, that everyone kind of feels their own role in the family and they don't automatically feel like a caretaker. One real quick question to kind of add to that is, how did y'all handle your friends and how your friends felt about, or the questions that they asked about your sibling? Or did you feel, truthfully and honestly, did you feel like you couldn't talk to them, or you didn't? We had one survey response once that said, they didn't really feel comfortable with their friends being around their sibling with AS because it made them uncomfortable. They didn't know what to or how to respond. So even if it was how you felt, or how would you suggest like younger kids, Drew being a teacher, I'm sure you can kind of jump in and help on that one. How would you help them or give them some advice to explain what's kind of going on and how kids are different?
I think part of that is being really open and clear and all that with your kids. And so, because I remember being young and like explaining to other kids my age, like about the type of transmission that my sister had of Angelman syndrome. And I feel like part of that is just the parents being open with their kids about this is how this happened. These are the details. This is what, and also because I think some kids have worries about that of like, am I going to get Angelman syndrome? And things like that. Or if I have kids later, are my kids going to have Angelman syndrome? So those are just worries that probably kids have that they don't always verbalize. So being really honest and open about all that stuff, I think is helpful, because then it gives them the language to explain it to others.
I do think also just being in the school setting too, a change that I'm realizing as I'm getting older is that in general, like in elementary schools, inclusion is so much more of a thing. So friends of siblings now will know somebody in their class that has, whether it's Angelman syndrome, which that's probably rare, but autism, Down syndrome, it's everything. The kids have been exposed to it a lot more. When I was first kind of explaining my brother to my future nieces, they're now my nieces, but at the time they were going to be, future, their mom was able to say, oh, like so-and-so in your class. And it was like, that's right. There's already a frame of reference for somebody may need a little bit of extra support. I can explain what he doesn't talk, but he understands a lot more, things like that. And there's already kind of more of a frame of reference. So I feel like, I hope at least for this kind of next generation that if there's younger siblings, it might be a little bit easier. Or honestly, in my experiences, I don't remember everything. I was probably like screaming it from the, he has this and it's all, here's how you get it. And I really don't remember exactly what I said. I don't remember anybody having any negative feedback or anything about it though. So
I remember when I first moved back home after I graduated from graduate school, and I would be at like Sam's or something. And we live in a somewhat small town, but it's like everyone knows Kate. So you're known as Katie's sister.
Mhm.
So it just because she has made such a positive impact on so many people in our community over the years, and she had many of the same teachers that my sisters and I had. So, I mean, that's kind of cool, actually, that she's more well known than I am around town. So, I mean, even today, I still sometimes run into people who at church who know her from elementary school and remember her being in their class, which is pretty cool.
That's neat.
I had I totally agree with what you guys have said about even like how we explained or how you interacted as like elementary age. As a preteen and teenager, I realized, I probably didn't realize at the time, but I didn't bring my friends around. My parents now in my 20s told me, yeah, we didn't really see you between, you know, the time you got your driver's license and when you went to college. And like, what I realized looking back on it, it wasn't necessarily an embarrassment thing, because I got that out of my system in elementary school. Like I knew how to explain to people, like Carly doesn't talk, but she loves to swim and she loves to dance and she loves to listen to music, you know. In high school, it was just like easier not to bring people around. Like it was just a complexity thing, or me thinking like, oh, like what is that going to add more to my parents' plate if I'm like entertaining, you know. I had youth group and everybody's parents hosted that. Like everybody's parents switched weeks. Like, oh, we're going to this person's house this week and that. And I just never volunteered because it was like either too complex, too difficult, or I didn't even think about it. And back, like that is because of Carly, but it wasn't a choice I made. It was Carly's fault, you know?
So kind of piggybacking on that, something we've been asked is, did you feel guilt asking your parents to do anything about, like, did you guys kind of take on some of what you felt like your parents were having to do so much with your other sibling? Did you not want to ask any more of them? Does that make sense? Like, and totally no wrong answers, just curious.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that, and this might not be true for everybody, it might be a personality thing for me too, but I feel like I wanted to be the one that they didn't have to worry about, you know. So that's a lot. That's a lot on a kid, you know, or even on a teenager. But yeah, I mean, you see everything that they're going through and the family's going through, and for me, I'm like, well, I better do everything perfectly because I don't want to add another stress or another worry.
Anyone else feel?
I've heard that. I've heard that before. I don't remember having those thoughts when I was younger about that I have to be perfect to not cause any other stress. I think I guess I just don't remember having that specific thought. It was definitely more just we're all kind of doing our own thing, and I think everybody was supported. And yeah, in terms of when I hear the word guilt, though, I think that when I was younger, I didn't, I don't remember feeling guilt at the time. Getting older, I kind of feel some guilt now that I get to not live with my parents, or, you know, have, you know, now that I'm married and, you know, we're starting a family, that I get to do that and that he doesn't. Granted, he's super happy where he is. So that, like, you know, it's a personality thing, but I think that's how the guilt, I see, or I feel a little bit of guilt, you know, as I'm getting older, kind of going through life like that, not necessarily when I was younger.
Not just guilt that like you get to do things your brother doesn't get to do, but I'm finding that like things my parents don't get to do. Like my parents, Carly still lives with my parents. She's 23. Like we, as a family, know that's where she should be right now. Like she's in the right spot, but they are not empty nesters like all of the friends that they had for a long time. And so their lives are moving forward. I carry a lot of guilt or battle that guilt on a regular basis, knowing I don't need to feel guilty, but I might still feel guilty that I can pick up on a weekend and go camping with friends whenever I want. And like, they don't have that freedom or the ability to do stuff that I get to do.
I think that's a good point. And my sister doesn't live with my parents anymore. I think it's been 3 years. And when all that was happening, I was just thinking like, I have an older brother who's 4 years older. I was thinking this is the first time in 38 years that they haven't had someone to care for at home. And yeah, I mean, what you said is true. Like thinking that they finally have a little bit of space, and still, I mean, you know, still there's a lot of responsibilities on them, but that they have a little bit of space to do those things is like major.
It's crazy y'all to hear y'all who have had such a different experience growing up with a sibling with different needs, that you still have that compassion piece so prominent there, that you feel that for your parents, and wanting to make sure that they have something as well. And I'm sure maybe growing into an adulthood and having or starting a family of your own has made you kind of see that a little bit more as well. Does anyone have anything else to add to that part? Or okay, so the big thing now that we're almost halfway through, kind of want to transition to, we talked a lot about, you know, being younger and how you guys felt, and I do think we will circle back around a little bit when we talk about what we have coming up and how we can support younger siblings and their friends. And so we have something exciting coming, but now kind of transitioning into adulthood. And I think this is what a lot of people really want. And if your parents are on, I'm going to ask you to be as honest as you can. Or if there's something you want to go ahead and get out, feel free to do it now. But a lot of people, I think, kind of assume, and this goes into a question that is being asked, is that a lot of people kind of assume that a sibling is going to take over care of their sibling when their parents get older and cannot do it. So I'll just ask this question that's been asked is, how do you feel honestly about being asked to care for your sibling long term after your parents have passed or are aging? Or would you prefer to have had them in the idea of a group setting arrangements made for you? So do you like the fact that you had ownership, or I'm not sure where you guys stand in the decision, or is that another piece that's like weighing on you? So if you can answer honestly, feel free. If you can't, then that's okay too.
I'll go. Yeah, one of my personal, you know, kind of anxieties and greatest fears is his care in the long run. And I don't want him to live elsewhere. I would like him to live with me. And that may be a lot to think about going forward, but I would at least like to, you know, be managing his care, and I'm totally open to him living with me. I think that a kind of group home setting or some other arrangement sounds scary to me personally at this point. I know that, you know, some of you others have your siblings are in those settings, and so I'm really excited to kind of hear your guys' thoughts on this. I think one thing that my parents are doing that I'm so appreciative of, you know, right now is that they're setting my other brother and I up to be able to take over that care, whether it's living with us or, you know, just in terms of the legalities and everything of it. They're, you know, trying to set us up for the most success in that and just make sure that everything is taken care of for him, so that isn't an added stressor on us in the future. But yeah, I think that's also more of a personal thing in my kind of, you know, just opinion and personality and wanting to be in charge of and in control, and hopefully have him living with me, assuming it works out with everybody involved in the future. So I'll turn it over to somebody else.
Well, Drew, you said that your sibling, and I know your mom, is living in a group home and doing really well. Was that a decision that the whole family made together? Was that a decision that your parents made? Or did they ask you to make it?
My parents kind of never set forth the expectation that we would be responsible for Paige's care and, you know, immediate care, where my brother and our co-guardian, or will be co-guardians when my parents die, but they never, I guess, I don't know, I don't remember ever talking about it exactly, but that was just the expectation for all of us was that we would be, you know, integral to her care, but not, you know, living with her or anything like that. So I'm really fortunate that my parents have put in all these things in place for us that once they can't be involved anymore, my brother and I know exactly what we need to do and all those kind of things. Yeah, it's interesting, Michelle, we're like coming at it from two completely different angles. But I don't know, I had another point, but I lost my train of thought there. But no, I don't remember ever talking about it exactly, but it was just always understood that that's how it would be. And I appreciate that. One of the things, kind of getting back to the youth part, and my parent, we've talked about this, isn't like an dropping a bomb on my mother, but like I felt as an adult looking back, once I started therapy, I was realizing that like I never had the chance to grow outside of that family dynamic. Like I never had the chance to experience things without having that extra, stress. And anyway, so I'm appreciative that my parents have set us up that, my brother and I can have our lives, being able to grow in our own lives and our own families, and, also have my sister in a really good position. So anyway.
Yeah, similar to Drew, my sister lives in Asilla, so lives with 4 other ladies. And to me, it's a huge relief that my parents are able to start building their future wishes for Ashley and be involved in that. Like Drew, our expectation was never that Ashley would live in my house, but it's that we maintain a strong relationship and be really involved in each other's lives. But in my personal experience, it's been a relief to have those supports in place. And I know that when the time would come that I would need to step into a guardian role, the staff at her home and the people that she sees in her program will be a good support to me also. So I'm glad to have their support system too.
I remembered my other point, if I can jump in back real quick, and that is that my parents wanted to make sure that they had page set up and in place before things got to an immediate need. And I think that's really important. They didn't want to get to be, to a point where they couldn't handle things and then have to figure out what her living situation was going to be and try to figure out the guardianship and everything at that point. So anyway, I think that's just an important point to note.
But it's very important. It's something that we have tried. Lesley, did you want to jump in?
Well, go ahead. I'll jump in after.
Okay, well, we've heard a lot that the conversations between siblings and parents as adults can be very difficult about this future planning, right? And we as a foundation are really trying to help support that. And I know Drew's mom and then Lesley and Amber have all been very instrumental in creating documents that will help us to help the community of this is what needs to be done and this is how it needs to be done. But I think one thing that adult siblings have also shared is having that conversation is very difficult, where your parents need to hear now that they are in their 60s or they are in their 70s, that you have to have this conversation to be able to move forward. So it's like you said, you're not in a position where you have to make changes fast and you don't know. If you have had those conversations with your family, how did you do it? Or did you just sit down and say, Mom and Dad, we're talking about it now and this is how it's going to go, and like not let them leave? Like, what would be some recommendations on how to have that conversation?
I'll jump in and add just one more thing and then piggyback that. But because I think it needs to be an ongoing conversation, not just a single conversation, which may be evident, but sometimes I think my parents think we've already had that conversation. And so therefore it sometimes is like, no, we still need to be talking about it a little bit more because yes. So in our case, and one of the points that Kathryn spoke about, like the tools and things necessary, like I would say, if your sibling is starting to approach adulthood, to sit down and talk to your parents, to know what they should do when they turn 18 and 21, because that's like the biggest, most pressing issues to start with. You can start small because it's different in every state. And in our case, when Kate turned 21, my parents were named co-guardians, but then we had to learn, because there's 3 other sisters, so were we going to draw straws or fight over it, or what was going to be the case? I won by default, I guess, because I'm the oldest and was close in proximity. So, but in West Virginia, you can only have 1 successor guardian at a time legally. So you can all work as a team, but legally it's on one person's shoulders. So I think it's good to know like how it's set up in your state, and understand all the nuances that go along with that, so that then you can have those conversations if you have other siblings, so nobody's feelings get hurt. And there's a lot that goes into all these conversations, as you all may be well aware. But I think one of the things my parents have done really well in recent years, and it may be because I bugged them for many years before that to actually do it, was to write everything down. Just write it all down. Please put it in a Word document or a Google Doc that you can all share and have access to. But accounts or any sort, I know Drew's mom has been really good about documenting all the SSI stuff and things that come later on when your parents turn 65 and all that good stuff. But just whoever is in charge of the various accounts and information, please write it down as soon as possible, so that God forbid something happened to you, that wealth of knowledge that you've been doing for years, that you do every day and don't think anything of it, if somebody comes in completely blind, not knowing where to start, there's a roadmap of sorts. So I think that would probably be a gift to your other children, whether they realize it now or not. So
for younger siblings, because that's all, you're spot on and 100% correct. For, let's say, parents who have siblings that are kids that are in their 20s, early 20s, haven't started their lives, would having some sort of a checklist, we're very list oriented people, but with having some
we love lists.
Of a checklist of, and not just items that they need to have, because we have that, we know you need to go through Social Security, this, that, and the other, but like topics that they need to cover, things like you said, like accounts, so you need to talk about this, we need to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Would something like that be beneficial, so then you can take this sheet of paper in these ongoing conversations that you have with your family and be like, here's everything we need to make sure that we discussed, and we kind of need to do it now? Or can you start putting some of this stuff together? Like, would that be something you would all feel, if you haven't had that conversation, or you are having these ongoing conversations, to parents who, my son's 8, so we're not doing this yet, my kids are 2 and 6 months, but at some point, we do want to make sure that the whole community is educated on how you handle these things, because you never think it's going to come to that point, or you never think you're going to have to handle or talk about transitioning, but you do. So
well, and I think one of the other things, not to fast forward, but like having the conversation with your parent to know what their wishes for the child with Angelman is, what it in their best options, or in a perfect world, what would they like to see? Because I know my version may differ from my parents' version, but knowing what is their best hope would also probably tie into my decision making, and my sisters and my decision making. So, but not knowing, without having the conversation, you may not know, what do you wish for Kate 10 years from now, whether or not you're still here, which is a really hard conversation to have, and a subject to broach with your parents when they may not want to admit that they may not be here and may not be making those decisions themselves. So, because in our case, like my dad has always, and my mom has always said that Kate will go off and have a life all on her own, just like the rest of you all did. And now, as 3 grown adults, we're kind of like, well, you might not be here, you might not have a say. So we may change our mind and do what we want, which is probably not the best way to interact with your adult parents. But I mean, it's just that dynamic may change as the circumstances may change, in which Kate may need to go live with one of us for a period of time, etc. But it's like having those conversations up front, knowing that maybe your parents haven't thought of your perspective, because my dad and my mom think of it from the parent perspective, not the sibling perspective. And we think of it from the sibling perspective, which then kind of turns into a more parental perspective. So it's not easy, but I think open communication is helpful.
I'm envisioning this not fun game night, you know, where you have the cards and it's like you can't move on until you answer this one.
Right.
But if you have it there, would that make life so much easier? And then you don't, not easier, but
Right.
would that make these conversations easier?
I kind of want to jump in because I'm envisioning, yes, I love a checklist too. You know, teacher, special ed teacher. However, I worry that would, I think an important thing to remember is that it will change.
Yeah.
Perspectives will change, you know, as you know, as a sibling getting older, things have changed as parents, you know, just so many. I mean, think of how COVID changed our lives in the last year and a half. And so I wouldn't want a checklist to kind of pigeonhole anybody into like, this is what we have to talk about, and this is what we have to decide. I think something that really leaves it open and just helps start the conversation, no matter what age. Like when I hear early, I think Kathryn, originally you said early 20s, that sounded a little bit late to me. And maybe that just in my personal experience, my parents never expected anything. They've never put the expectation has never been there for him to live with me or for me or Jay, the other brother, to take over. It's been a little bit harder for me to ask and to get that information and to just personally like express that opinion. I feel like they're pretty aware of it now. If not, they're definitely after. No, we've had conversations, but you know, I just think when I was younger, as I was, you know, getting through high school and just kind of leaning towards at least going into special education or something along those lines, you know, just kind of realizing that is where my life path is going. I think it would have, and like, I feel drawn to like, yes, I really want to be involved, but I wasn't sure exactly how to express that. And then they're constantly, I know they're always worried about not wanting to put anything on me. And so I think just we've gotten better about having those conversations, you know, as we're all getting older together about, you know, what the current status is, what the current thoughts are, kind of, you know, it's not perfect, but and the whole other side, like I got married last year and that brought in a whole new realm to it, you know, in terms of, you know, I've always been very open with my husband about it. And those of you that are married and have kids, like I'm following your guys' journeys to, as I'm starting to get into that, just like how are your spouses feeling about it, and balancing those wishes as well, I think is a whole other conversation. We probably don't have time for that today, but yeah.
Kathryn, you joked about a game, like you joked about it, but that feels like exactly what Michelle's talking about is how I feel, because I'm in my like late 20s. How I feel today about being involved in Carly's life is vastly different from how I felt at 24, and that's vastly different than how I felt at 20. And so I almost envision like question cards, like discussion cards, like let's just whip one out. How do you feel today about my sister to live? Or how do you feel today about having to be her guardian? Like just stuff like that to get the conversation going, because that's the hardest part. And like Drew said, like in your family, like it was sort of assumed that your sib wouldn't live with one of you. Like you'd be involved, but they wouldn't live with you. That was not necessarily the assumption on our side. And that's how I was as a young 20-something. And after COVID, I spent all of COVID with Carly. Like we hung out all the time. That was my person. I never want her to live anywhere except with one of our family members. Like that changed vastly over the last 18 months. So it's funny, like, but it could really be as simple as like just prompts, you know?
I think like all of you are saying, open up the line of dialogue. And then just one thing my mother always says that like is that she, and I think a lot of other parents of kids with disabilities are really good at denial. And, you know, denial works for a really long time, but then at a certain point, it doesn't work anymore. And so if parents at, you know, every stage just kind of keep that long term in memory. And one thing I was gonna say is like we're 30 years younger or so than our parents. So we have a completely different point of view of, the parents might think they're going to live with them forever, but we know that, 30 years younger, that it's going to come back to us in some way or another. So denial, it's powerful, but, it doesn't work forever.
Well, kind of along that line, because you're 100% correct. Even as a parent of an 8-year-old, I'm like, well, we have stuff set up should something happen, but nothing's going to happen, so I get it. But along the lines of like, at what age, and we got some questions to answer, but as parents, we start this like transitioning to adulthood checklist at an early age for your child. Like 14 is when you're starting to really, stuff within the school system. So when do you start having age appropriate conversations about those things with your other children, with your siblings? Like at 15 years old would have been too much to say, hey, we're talking about, transitioning your kid out of our individual with AS, your sibling out of high school. Like at what age do you want to not pressure, but just to start casually bringing up these prompts and these topics from your perspective?
I feel strongly that the invitation should be extended at every age at an age appropriate level, because an invitation is wildly different than an expectation, right? And some of your sibs who are 5 might really care that their 8-year-old sib is included in class or not included in class, or comes to my soccer game or doesn't come to my soccer game. But if you don't invite them into that discussion, they don't feel like part of the team, So for me, like, that wasn't done perfectly my whole life, but we've practiced it a lot. And it's like that invitation of, okay, this is the conversation we're having as parents now. Do you have an opinion, or should we go have it by ourselves? Totally up to you. I think that's really powerful.
And I think also giving your child the opportunity to say, maybe I don't want my sibling to participate in something, in, a particular thing. Getting back to what I was mentioning earlier, give them the space to say, can you and I just go do something special? So I think you're exactly right, Alex. At any point, just keep it open and know that they can feel different ways at different times.
But that leads perfectly to our next question. Oh, go ahead, Lesley.
No, I was just going to add on to what Drew was saying. I think being the oldest of 4, my situation with Kate was vastly different, because I was already in my 20s when she started to approach adulthood. And so I was kind of already had already decided what I was going to do, whether my parents wanted my help or not. But with regard to spending quality time with your non-AS child by themselves separately, I think as a parent now, I understand the importance of spending one-on-one time with each child just anyway. And I know it's so much harder if you don't have the supports in place to have somebody you trust who can watch your AS child for a significant period of time. But one of the things my parents tried to do every once in a while with us is we went on a family vacation without Kate. And it wasn't always that way. And it was but it was, I remember now and thinking back, I think at the time my sisters and I were like, why are we leaving her at home? Shouldn't she be coming? Because she always came. But there were certain times when it really was easier not to take her with us. And then it gave everybody else kind of I hate to say normal vacation, but everyone understands what that means without. But so I think if there is a way, and I know this adds one more thing to parents' lists of things to do, but if you can find somebody who you trust who can watch your AS child, just to go spend an hour with your non-AS child on a somewhat regular basis, I think, to Drew's point earlier, that having that separation from time to time is good for everybody. And I know that looking back now, I appreciate how much my parents put time and effort into finding ways to do that.
And that goes really well with this question, is how would you suggest a parent help alleviate some of this guilt that siblings of children with AS have, balance, and what do you wish your parents would have done differently? So you guys have talked on a lot of really good things, but that one-on-one time, conversations, invitations, that's a great idea, and a great thing. I hope a lot of parents are hearing this too, because again, as a parent of young children, this all resonates and hits really hard so well. But is there anything you would say like your parents could have done differently? You guys have touched on some stuff, but like really just make you feel a little, I don't know, I don't know if guilt's right, something, just feel a little stronger, less guilty, comfortable. I don't know what the right word would be.
I think to Drew's point that he made earlier too, I think I wish my parents would have put us in therapy a lot earlier. I mean, just to like because when you're young and you're trying to process all of these things and all of these feelings, and your parents do the best they can with the tools that they have. And so they might not have all the tools and all the answers for your age appropriate needs at the time. And so I think that probably would have helped my sisters and I along the various bumps in the road later on.
So Lesley, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of make a point related to that. Was in education, one of the big things we do now is social emotional learning. And there's all this stuff about, they're called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And basically, like, if you have a high number of ACEs in your, then that contributes to negative factors later on. And I was always like, I don't have any ACEs, my life was good. And then I realized, like, having a sibling with a disability, that's an adverse childhood experience. I mean, and when I realized that, I was like, that has shaped me in certain ways that I didn't realize until I got to probably 30 years old.
So that's huge, because so this will segue, trying to segue and keep y'all on your hour time, into one of the things that we are getting ready to launch in September, and we're super excited about it. It's kind of like a junior ambassador program, and it is called Friends with Wings. And the idea is that it is just for siblings friends, for cousins, neighbors, classmates, whatever. And some of these things that y'all are talking about, we are hoping to embed, we're going to give them ownership of if they want to fundraise for their child, if they're their friend with AS. If they don't, cool. If there's a book that we're going to have that we are going to suggest, how kids are different. Just open dialogue of how do you talk to your friends, like resources of open dialogue of how do you talk to your friends. But we are also going to push Shannon, who is our counselor, that you can do through ASF, that you can do a family session with, or a one-on-one. It doesn't have to be family. So we are really excited about that, and really hope that y'all can kind of chime in, or anyone who is listening, chime in. What do you really want to see? Because here's another question I do want to get to is, advice for parents who have a 3-year-old neurotypical child and a 2-year-old with AS, and they're finding that their 3-year-old doesn't want to play much with her, and it breaks her heart. Having a 2-year-old, like myself, I feel like some of that is age, right, appropriate. So how would y'all like to help Autumn out there?
I don't have kids yet, but that sounds really young. I would say just give it time. Those of you that have kids, check, but 3 and 2 sounds really. Did I play with my other brother when I was that age? I don't know. That just sounds really young, and even if they don't want to play together all the time in the future, there will, they'll develop their own kind of sibling bond at some point. But
are there ways that y'all could suggest when you were younger, how you bonded, or things that you might have done with your sibling that were fun for y'all and not necessarily, a hassle? Or
I can still recite the Barney theme song. We watched so much Barney, so much.
Ours is SpongeBob. I got SpongeBob down.
So I think just finding those quality time activities. Barney, that was it for us. All of us would sit down and watch Barney for hours.
My kids is currently Cars.
Yeah.
Every line of it I could tell you. What about Amber, Alex, Drew? What did y'all do with your siblings when you were younger?
I'm 6 years older, so it's a little bit different for me. I don't think I probably would have played too much with a typical sister that was 6 years younger.
I just say, just like all siblings, your relationship and what you enjoy doing together, it changes over the years. It changes as different things happen in life. So, you know, a lot of times that just naturally, as ages progress and relationships build, I think you find what's fun at different stages.
Mhm.
Well, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to pop them in. We've got a few more minutes. Let's see, I'm bad about, there's a chat box and question box. Shefton plays with her 6-month-old brother, and that's what got them kind of thinking. She said, Autumn said about that. So I get it. I don't know. My 2-year-old just kind of runs around like a crazy person. I don't know if he really, you know, he like hits his older brother and then he goes and hits his sister. So I don't know. I do think that y'all are right, like spot on, just kind of keep allowing those relationships to develop. Another thing that I want us to discuss or to announce is that we are going to have an adult sibling, not so much support group, but an adult siblings group. And we are encouraging everyone. It's going to be, the first one is going to be in September. So you will see an email about that, but it's going to be a Zoom webinar format. It's going to be informative. We are encouraging it to just be siblings. So it's very open, very honest, and give you guys all the information kind of about moving forward, and people can jump in and ask questions, and we'll kind of moderate that as well. And then in October, we're going to have an adult group meet, also in webinar format, and we are encouraging parents, siblings, cousins, anyone who caretakers who might be in that role that can really come in and have, you know, maybe people hear that we need to have these open and honest conversations, and ask the questions about transitioning to adulthood and transitioning care and whatnot. But we do want to recommend that people send us your suggestions. You know, what you guys have provided some really excellent feedback on having, as a parent, it's all stuff. I was wondering if 3 was an appropriate age to start my kid in therapy for this. So, you know, we're doing well. But anything else you guys have you want to share about life?
I'll add one more thing that I have found great joy over the years connecting with other siblings who have siblings with Angelman syndrome, because my family has been attending the Angelman syndrome conferences for, dare I say, 30 years. And so the connections I've made with siblings even 30 years ago, I know that we're all now going through very similar stages in life, and I could pick up the phone and reach out to a couple of them, no questions asked, at a moment's notice, just to like bounce ideas off. But those bonds were formed many, many years ago. And so I am so excited about all the new resources that are coming down the pike for adult siblings who are now entering a different phase of life, in which transitioning into that caregiver role down the road, and whatever form that takes. But I'm just really appreciative to the Angelman Syndrome Foundation and all the things they've done over the years to get us to this point and where we're headed in the future.
And that just reminded me, I was going to say that the past 2 conferences I've worked with the SIB shops. My mother has coordinated SIB shops, and I've done with the groups, and just seeing that, I don't know, it just really kind of gets me emotionally, because I usually worked with the younger kids, and just like seeing the maturity that kids have at like 5 or 6 years old, and the things that they understand, and like I don't know, it just shows you, you know, that there's trials and tribulations, but like there's so many powerful things that come out of you know, the experience that all of us have had. I don't know, so keep that in mind when the next in-person conference happens, the SIB shops.
I will do the SIB shops, and then so it's going to be at the Kalahari Resort in Texas next August 3rd through the 5th, I believe, or 2nd through the 5th is the family part, but we will also do like a big sibling party, like something big and fun. Just let all the kids get together, and adults, we're all coming together. So anyone else want to add anything before we let y'all go? right. Well, thank you guys so much. It's been such helpful information. I hope that there was a lot of parents of children on as well that can really take what you guys say to heart. I know it helps me out. And so I said, everyone, if you have any questions, if you have any follow-up, we have a whole resource page that helps with adult transitioning and whatnot, and just be on the lookout for some of the stuff coming down, not just for adult siblings, but also for kids. And so we'll probably bring you guys back on one time coming up to talk to some kiddos going forward. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. Good.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye, y'all.